Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Phil's Philosophy Podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about an 8-step checklist for dealing with sadness. I know that we've all felt sad, we've all felt depressed, we've all felt anxiety, and we deal with it all the time. You know, that's just kind of part of the human condition, and it's definitely a big part of the normative society, right? But sometimes it's hard to navigate through those feelings. You know, it's okay that they come up, but it's not okay that they linger. And so it's important to have a strategy set in place that can help us navigate ourselves through those kinds of feelings. And so I have a short, like I said, it's an 8-step, eight little checklist, 8-point checklist that is there for me when I start to feel sad. So, number 1, the first reminder on this checklist is that all things are temporary. Nothing is going to last forever. And obviously that includes this sadness, these feelings. You know, when you get really happy, that's great. Enjoy that moment. But that's not going to be every moment. And when you get angry, you know, rest within that moment. And it's okay to feel that way because you're not going to always feel that way. Sometimes it feels like we've felt like that for a long time, right? Sometimes it feels like if you feel depressed or if you feel sad or anxious, sometimes it feels like you've been there for a really, really long time. And often that's really just a trick your brain plays on you. You know, you can have a couple bad days and all of a sudden, you know, you're telling yourself, man, you know, I always feel sad. I always feel this. I always feel that. And that's normal. That's a normal thing for us to do to ourselves. But it's important to recognize that does happen. I'm not saying that happens all the time though. And of course there are instances where we can be really sad or really depressed for an extended period of time, for a very long time. And before we go on to point 2, I do want to say that often that really means that there's something that's out of place that we haven't addressed. And it's easy to get dramatic and to be like, well, I'm the one that's out of place, and you know, but it's often something within our environment or something within our internal environment that we've left unchecked and we haven't really dealt with. And it's important to eventually get to those things, because anything left unchecked for too long becomes a much greater problem. It grows. So on to point 2. So the second part of this checklist is to remember to breathe deeply. I know this sounds extremely cliche, and if anyone's ever thought of doing yoga, or if anyone's ever, you know, gotten into, you know, any level of spirituality, you know, there's a lot of breathing exercises that kind of come along with that. And it's really easy to like dismiss when someone says breathe deeply as like, oh, okay, you know. But honestly, it is one of the greatest medicines. In fact, I'm going to say it is the greatest medicine that exists. And so much can be found within our breath. So much can be found within the process of quieting ourselves and focusing on the breathing, the breath itself, to, and you know, I'm getting real woo about it, but to rein it down and to ground it, often when we feel sad or anxious or depressed, we have a tendency to breathe really shallow. And when we're shallow breathing, it increases our heart rate, and it excites our mind. It causes us to rapidly think and to move. It's the type of breathing that we do when we're scared of something, right? Think of our lizard brain. Think of like the auto response that we have to a predator. And it's not deep, sorry. It's like heaving breathing. It's very fast and aggressive. And all of that is a survival mechanism. And so when we feel really sad or depressed or anything like that, those shallow breaths that we're doing, those kinds of breaths, they really help lock us in to those feelings. And so it's important to start where we have the most control, because obviously when we're sad, we don't have much control of our mind. But what we do have control over is our body. And so to rein it in and to lock in on controlling something as fundamental as our breathing, that is tremendous in being able to slowly turn the tide and bring us out of those kinds of feelings, or at least to communicate back to the brain that, maybe we can relax for a moment. So on to point number 3. And point number 3 is while this kind of happens while you're in checkpoint number 2. And that's the question, what am I feeling? And this might seem like a redundant or silly question, but it's actually really, really important, because sometimes we can even confuse our own emotions. It's really easy to do. For example, sometimes it's like people have a tendency to go one direction or another with certain anxieties. And it's a common theme and trope within society. Some people will either not eat at all when they're anxious, or they will binge and overeat when they're anxious. And it's very easy. In this case, I'm going to take the binging. It's very easy to confuse the feeling of hunger with the feeling of anxiety. Or I should rather say it's confuse the feeling of anxiety with the feeling of hunger. So in the case of those who get anxious and binge, they're feeling anxiety. They're feeling a loss of control, and they're nervous and they're scared or whatever it is, like the specific of what they're feeling. But their brain is telling their body, hey, we need food. And why? Because food comforts them. But they're interpreting hunger in those moments. They're looking for those comfort foods, and they are soothing through that action, when in reality what they're actually feeling is anxiety. And it's so important that they get to the root of that. They identify that it's anxiety that they're feeling, and that is what they need to begin to work on. So back to this point, the question that you have to ask yourself, what am I feeling? You have to identify what it is that you're feeling. And then checkpoint number 4, once you've identified it, is you have to ask yourself, what is causing that feeling? So if you're feeling really sad, then you've identified that. You have to ask yourself, like, okay, am I underperforming in a certain facet of life? And is that causing me to be sad? Is that causing me to be disappointed with myself? You can ask yourself, is someone not treating me well? And that's causing me to not value myself because they don't value me. So am I sad because of that? It's really easy, let's say in a relationship where you haven't eaten all day and you really didn't eat the day before because you've been so busy, and your boyfriend, let's say, he's home and he makes dinner for himself, and you're working late, and you get home, and he didn't prepare you anything. He didn't save any of it for you, and you're kind of left when you get home to kind of fend for yourself. And now, technically, he didn't do anything wrong. You didn't ask him to maybe make anything for you or to set anything aside for you, and he didn't. He doesn't owe you that, right? But you guys share a bond. You share a very special and specific relationship with one another, and so like the fact that the consideration wasn't made seems to undervalue you, and so you can begin to feel sad. But then you'll likely, because you care about him, you'll likely do something along the lines of tell yourself that you're just really sad because you've been working so hard, or you're really sad because your coworker was rude. When the truth is, you're sad because after all of that, when you came home to your safe place, you weren't considered, and that's left you feeling probably a little empty, or at the very least undervalued, and it's causing you to undervalue yourself, because maybe now you're going to guilt trip yourself into thinking like, oh man, I don't deserve that, do I? I don't deserve that kindness. Why was I gassing myself up to think that maybe, so that being an example of what's causing you to feel sad. And it could be any number of things, or any combination of things. It could be a huge list of things. But one last thing I want to say on this point is, if it is a huge list of things, it's extremely important that you don't look at the entire list and think to yourself, oh man, like I need to address this whole huge list. How am I going to ever do that? Don't do that. Look at that list, and you'll know within your gut, you'll feel it. Identify what are like the 2, maybe 3 big things that are really driving you down, and choose those to make the direct immediate cause of the feeling, right? There's a whole list of things, like you can add life trauma to that, and that can make you sad, but whatever it is in this moment that's really driving that feeling, that's what you need to be addressing. All right, guys, so point number 5, you have to ask yourself the question, is there something that I can do about that right now? Whatever it is that's causing that feeling, or the feeling itself, is there something I can do right now? And this one's really simple. If yes, and you do need to really think about this, first of all, because sometimes the cause can be a little bit complicated. Like, for example, let's say your boss is overloading you at work, and it's causing you to be really sad and anxious. But maybe the job market in your industry is a little bit tight right now, and so there's not a whole lot of places for you to move laterally, and certainly not vertically, right? And maybe your boss and you don't have the best relationship, like you couldn't just go to your boss and talk to them about it. In that situation, it's a little bit tricky, right? So the question being, is there anything you can do about it? If the answer is yes, then ask yourself, what's 1 or 2 things that I can go do right now, that I can begin to work on, that are going to address the cause of this feeling, or at the very least begin to alleviate the feeling. It's going to add some level of comfort. And then if there's nothing you can do about this feeling, then this is really important. At least for me it is. Ask yourself, what is something that I can do right now? At least for me, and I'm sure this is the case for a lot of people, but at least for me, when I feel like I'm helpless to a feeling that I can't address it, and I can't do anything about it, at least not right now, so I'm left to fester in it. It helps me to find something else that I can do that makes me feel either productive or creative or fulfilled in some way, right? So it helps to have hobbies, right? Because if you have a hobby, obviously you can, when you feel this way, you can go do that hobby. All right. If you play guitar, you can go pick up your guitar. If you paint, you can go pick up your brushes. But and remember that whatever it is you go do, it doesn't have to be your best. It just has to be the action of doing it. So it helps if there's something that you can go do other than just sit there, right? And we'll touch on that in a little bit. Oh no, you know what? Let's say it. So I'm gonna move one of my list points up. So we're gonna say number 6 is move. Move. Do something. Do whatever it is you have to do. So if the answer was yes to point 5, then go do that something that addresses the problem. If the answer was no, then do something. Move. Stagnancy undeniably allows those feelings to fester. It allows those feelings to grow. It allows you to dwell not on any solution, but on the problem. And it just leaves you there sitting in a pile of your own crap, because there's nothing to take your mind away from what you're feeling or to remind you that there's more than what you're feeling. Because sometimes when we feel like this, it's all encompassing, like everything good. It's like the what do they call them? Dementors in Harry Potter. Like every good feeling just evaporates. It all goes away. And we all know that that's obviously not reality, but it feels like reality. It feels like that is absolutely exactly what's happening, is that there's nothing good left when we feel certain ways, right? And so we have to put these processes in place to remind ourselves that that is not at all the truth. It is not the case. So point number 6, move. Do something. So now we're on to point 7. We got 2 left. And this one, I know sometimes when we feel sad, we feel alone. But number 7 is call a loved one. Call someone that you care about. Call someone who is in your circle. And first of all, there are people that care about you. There are. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. But there are people that care about you. And it's important that when we feel sad or depressed or anxious or whatever we're feeling, it's important to include those people in those moments too. Sometimes we feel like we can only include our loved ones in the good moments. Like the only reason to call them is to celebrate something or to invite them to do something. And that's not at all what they're there for. Relationships are not formed to celebrate with each other. They're formed to support one another. You find kindred spirits within someone, and that is a bond formed to support each other. And like that's really what relationships are about. They're about shared experience and support. So when we feel this way, call someone, talk to them, see if they want to have lunch or coffee and have a conversation with you. Talk about these issues, and don't be embarrassed by it. Remember that whatever you're feeling, other people feel too. And back to like that, feeling like an island thing. I know that we can feel isolated, but the truth is, like, everyone goes through this. Not everyone wants to talk about it because they're embarrassed about it, but there's nothing to be embarrassed about because we all experience it. Sometimes the clown is the saddest one in the room. Look at one of the greatest comedians and comedic actors ever. Robin Williams is the iconic sad clown. He made everyone's life better. He was incredible at brightening up a room, making everyone laugh, leaving lasting impressions. and he struggled with his mental health and with his depression all the way to the end. So you're not alone in feeling like this. So call someone, talk to them about it, let them love you, because they do. Call them. So number 8, and this is going to start off sounding a little bit like number 7, but there's a deeper point here. You can call it 7B. Maybe it's only a 7-point list, but I made a separate bullet. So number 8 is to remind ourselves that all of these feelings, so religious people, they would tell you that they come from the devil, or, some devil figure, a demon, a bad place. It's important that we remember that that devil archetype is within us. It is us. It's an aspect of ourselves that's attacking the rest because it wants something different. And in that respect, it is not an evil feeling. It's not an evil thing. It's not bad. It's not there to ruin your life. The truth is, it just wants to be seen, and it wants some validation for what it's going through and what it feels. And I know that I'm personifying an aspect, a singular aspect of the self, but ultimately that's really what it is. For example, I'll use a different emotion. Let's say jealousy. When jealousy rears its ugly head, it's a part of ourselves that sees something in someone, something that someone has, or a quality that they possess, or whatever it is. They see something in someone that they want. They see something in someone that this devil archetype, this shadow aspect, this part of us, it sees itself as deserving of. It sees itself as wanting to be that or to have that. And it's not a logical, intelligent thing. It is a feeling. It is an aspect, a very primitive, primal feeling. And so it's not going to logically reason out, well, maybe I should come up with a 10-point, step process, a plan for the future to accomplish those. It's not going to do that, right? It's there rattling the cage, screaming like, that should be me. Why aren't I the one? And honestly, when you look at it from that perspective, from the lack of understanding that aspect has, the lack of rational thinking, it's really sad to see and to feel and experience. So once you've kind of gone through all these steps, what I'm hoping you'll understand, and what I try to feel and understand by the end of this list, if I've done everything. Mind you, going back to point 2, keep breathing. Don't stop breathing. Deep breathing, consciously experiencing every breath. Anyway, hopefully at this point, you can observe that shadow aspect of yourself. See that that's what's happening. That whatever it is you're feeling, it's a part of you that's crying out for some kind of a change, because it doesn't understand what's happening. Let's say you're having a difficult relationship with your parents, and you understand it. Intellectually, you fully understand what's going on. You get it. But you can't help but feel the way that you feel, right? Well, it's that part of yourself that doesn't understand. It's that part of yourself that doesn't get it. It can't think itself through it. And so it's your job to work through all these different steps so that you can internalize the rational mind and allow it to kind of wash over this shadow while simultaneously, and this is the point, allow your shadow to be, accept it, accept those feelings, validate it. It's rattling that cage because it wants to be seen. Validate that shadow. Let it know that it's okay for it to exist. Let it know that you see it and that you love it because it is you. That feeling of wanting that good relationship or wanting that promotion at work to validate your work, that feeling of wanting, to just not be so damn tired all the time, or to like what you see in the mirror, whatever it is. Those are valid feelings, and they shouldn't be dismissed or told to shut up. So, I guess bonus number 9 is just a reminder to number 1. If you remember back to number 1 at the beginning of this video, I told you, remember that all of this is temporary. Sometimes even when you work through all your issues, you still feel them lingering, right? It's like that scratch, that itch at the back of the head. And in those moments, I want you to please remember, it's all temporary. We're here for a moment, hardly. And while we're here for that moment, we're going to experience something incredible, life. And life has many promises. One of them is pain. And so, while you're existing in that one promise, remember that there is more to come and that this is just temporary. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around this long. If you haven't already, subscribe. It'd be great. It really helps me out. Depending on where you're watching this, either leave a review or give that thumbs up or whatever it is. Just interact with this. It really does help. Spread this, share it with your friends. But most importantly, honestly, remember to love yourself, and that all of this, all of our struggles, all of our feelings, they're all temporary. All right? That's been another episode of Phil's Philosophy Podcast. I'm your host, Phil. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.